The UN is now urging Israel to open more border crossings for humanitarian aid. Israeli forces have destroyed many hospitals and medical centres right across Gaza. Those still functioning are overwhelmed with barely any specialised equipment, medicine or nutritional supplements. And nearly the entire 2.2 million population in Gaza has been displaced and vital facilities have been destroyed. More than 1 million Palestinians are still living in crowded tents or makeshift shelters in unsafe conditions. Now, as part of the US-brokered ceasefire, Gaza's Rafah crossing, its crucial link to the outside world, is set to reopen. But it's not clear when that will happen or who will control it. Nida Ibrahim reports.
The Rafah border crossing should be open now as part of the ceasefire deal to allow Palestinians in Gaza to leave and give a chance to those who want to return. But it's unclear how the border will operate. The Rafah crossing is a lifeline for Palestinians in the Gaza Strip as their only connection to the outside world and the only crossing that was not directly controlled by Israel. In 2005, a US-brokered agreement signed by Israel and Egypt allowed the Palestinian Authority and a European Union mission to operate the border, although Israel maintained indirect control over Palestinians' ability to travel. This lasted for about 2 years until Hamas took control of the Gaza Strip in 2007.
There are media outlets reporting that Scott Bessent, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, has outlined financial aid to that country that would total $40 billion. For more,
and now Scott Bessent is talking about a $20 billion private idea of somebody spending $20 billion to buy bonds in Argentina.
And I'm so glad you bring up Argentina's track record of paying back loans
of people, because the Argentines had the legislative elections question a lot of merit. So we don't really know. There's some.
For the first time in 20 years, Israeli forces directly controlled the border crossing.
Here's what nobody's telling you about the new bearskin hoodie. This fleece is thick. It's made from 340 GSM.
Back here in the U.S. tonight.
As part of the Trump ceasefire deal, which calls for their gradual withdrawal.
Government shutdown, now day 14, federal workers fired. And now with millions of government employees going unpaid, President Trump has announced a $20 billion bailout for Argentina. Democrats tonight blasting the move, saying U.S. taxpayers are now paying for this. Rachel Scott at the White House for us.
Tonight, with the government shutdown stretching into day 14 and with millions of federal workers going unpaid, President Trump welcoming his political ally, Argentina's President Javier Milei, to the White House to announce a $20 billion bailout for his country.
Argentina is one of the most beautiful countries that I've ever seen, and we want to see it succeed. Very simple.
The economic lifeline comes just a month before Argentina's crucial midterm election. The president making it clear his support depends on the outcome.
If he wins, we're staying with him, and if he doesn't win, we're gone.
Democrats seizing on the move, accusing the president of using taxpayer dollars to help another country while the U.S. government is shut down.
The overwhelming majority of Americans say we need help with our health care, and they're busy spending $20 billion because Trump seems to really like the leader of Argentina.
Democrats say they won't agree to fund the government unless Republicans extend Obamacare subsidies, so insurance costs don't rise for millions. The White House already firing more than 4,000 federal workers, threatening to lay off even more and dismantle programs important to Democrats.
We're not closing up Republican programs because we think they work. So we are closing up Democrat programs that we disagree with, and they're never going to open again.
At Washington Reagan Airport today, air traffic controllers are sounding the alarm. Peter Lefevre has been an air traffic controller for nearly 16 years.
Not knowing exactly how I'm going to have childcare for my kids or put gas in the car or pay the next mortgage payment adds a certain level of stress onto an already stressful profession. It's just very difficult.
David, tonight the Defense Department says it will be redirecting about $8 billion in funds to make sure our military troops do not miss a paycheck tomorrow. But millions of other federal workers still going without pay as this shutdown drags on, David.
And members of Congress still getting paid, of course, as you pointed out often, Rachel. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Hopefully you have you've had a great a couple of days. Good morning, everyone. So as you clearly can see, the Congress is getting paid. Everything is shut down. You'd think that the people who are over it would not be getting paid, but they're getting paid. So why would we care if no one else gets paid? And oddly enough, I guess we get a chance to see the importance of government, right? Of the federal government. And the weird part is that the federal government makes up like 1%, or 1% of the people work for the federal government, or and most of that 1% is in the military. We don't have a lot of workers at the federal level. We don't have them, but the ones that we have been important. But to some folks, they believe that the federal government is doing nothing. To some folks, they look and say, well, the state governments are doing fine without the federal government involved. But I want you to look at it like this here. Your state may be doing fine. But if my wife and I had 50 children, and our children, we continue to give them allowance every year, and we help them out when they need help, and our children have all of their bills paid because we've been giving them money, and we can't really pay all of our bills, is that really our fault? I mean, does that make our children's situation much better? Even if we're going out and buying extra things that we don't need, my wife and I, we're still giving you kids money to keep you afloat. And the crazy thing is that this is the history of the nation. This is the history, at least the recent history of this nation, are the states asking for money, needing money to pay their bills. The federal government gives them money. As we're going to talk about, you probably read through it in your policy portion. Or you will, that the federal government gives over a third of the money to us. It comes from the federal government. And they give us this money, and we use that money to balance our budget along with other monies. But we do use that money to balance our budget. And then we look and say, hey, look at mom and dad. Look at the federal government. They can't even pay their bills. That's freaking crazy, man. Look at us. We pay our bills. The audacity. The audacity. And the crazy part is that you know why most people don't know this? Because it takes a little research and people won't do it. It takes a little effort to put in and people won't do it. Folks have been told something and it's easy to just accept it. But think about the logic of that, right? How can you have all these things without raising taxes? How can you pay all the bills without raising taxes? Explain that to me. If you're not raising taxes to bring in money, how are you paying your bills? Oh, it's dad. The federal government is giving us money to keep our bills paid. The federal government is working for us even whenever we're not working at the state level. The federal government is there for us even when the states are trying to discriminate against people. That's how that works out. Right? And we still think that the federal government is irrelevant. The federal government is too big. But the federal government has to be big. It has to be bigger than the 50 states. Like, what else would it be? Smaller than the 50 states? It's not a federal government. Why would the federal government be Delaware? It doesn't make any sense. Right? It has to be larger than that. Why wouldn't the state, you think the state of Texas is going to be smaller than Austin? The state of Texas is smaller than San Antonio. It just takes a little thought and logic, and you'll think it through, and it'll make sense to you. But the problem is that it takes thought and logic, and you have to think it through. And a lot of people don't do that. It's just easier just to go along with it. I know that most people probably just don't care about government. And that's the other thing, until government comes knocking on your door. A lot of people don't care about taxes until the bill shows up. A lot of people don't care that they need services like water and gas and, running water and the trash service to come around until they don't have it. A lot of people assume this stuff was always here. We get the same thing with all kinds of things where people just assume things are here. They forget that folks have had to put that in place, that someone's had to institute that. And when instituting it, a lot of people are upset. No matter if it's seatbelt rules, no matter if it's COVID shots, no matter if it's rights for certain people, and no matter if it's money being given to you by the federal government. These guys are working hard for us. These are our neighbors, right? These are our relatives. This is not some random weird entity that we don't know of. This is not some alien force. The federal government are us. It's us. And when we get upset with the federal government, we're getting upset with the folks in Congress. Those folks are getting paid. You're getting upset with the president. He's getting paid. Seriously? You're upset with the person that works at the VA hospital? Like that bothers you? Like you're upset with the person who is just going to work at Health and Human Services? You're upset with the person who's monitoring the beef and the food that you're taking in? Like that really bothers us? Because that's the federal government, people. You're upset with FEMA? So when the hurricane does hit or a flood hits or something, they get to come out and they're going to come out and help you, but you're upset with them? Because that's the federal government. The question is, do people even know what the federal government is? Because that's the federal government. It's not Ted Cruz. It's not John Cornyn. It's not Donald Trump. It's not any of these folks. The federal government workers who are being punished right now for a shutdown are your average people that you see. If you got children in school, it's their parents. If you got neighbors, it's probably them. The folks who you're thankful to see, the folks who answer your calls when you're waiting and holding online, the folks who are getting you all the things that you need, who are processing your taxes, who are doing all these things. That's the federal government. The people who keep us safe so that we don't have random bombings in this country. That's the federal government, people. The folks that keep our parks together so that we can go to our parks and things like that, our national parks. Meanwhile, we're looking to get rid of them. We're looking to fire these workers, to use them as some sort of pawn in some weird game here. I showed you that clip because I want to show you $40 billion offered to sway an election. It's blackmail. It's, hey, make sure my guy wins or I won't save your country. I'll let it go default. I'll let it go into default. It's blackmail. And we have no concern, do we? Like, we don't care. We don't care. These little small things that we're seeing. The Supreme Court is hearing rules on voting rights this week. These little small things that are happening and no one pays attention to because it's easier to live a life of bliss and not think about it. I believe I told you all this. I often wondered, while Russia is bombing Ukraine, like what are the Russians thinking? Are they like fine with that? Are they rooting for the bombing of Ukraine? Are they okay with this? But I think the answer is they don't really care what's going on around them since nothing is affecting them at the moment. It's not that they hate the Ukrainians, and they probably don't want them killed or bombed. It's just better not to even pay attention. The interesting part is that our government has been shut down. It probably has not affected you in your everyday life. And that's fine, and that's good that it's not affecting you. But I'll say the difference between that is that I think that people look at the government being shut down as a good thing. I don't think it's like the example I gave from Russia or people in Moscow saying, oh, I didn't realize they were bombing Ukraine, or I heard something about that, but I don't know anything about that. That's sad. I think that the people, once they hear that the government is shut down, many people will say, that's good. You're like, a lot of people aren't getting paid. That's good because the federal government's too big. That's fine. Mind you, these are probably some of the same people who think that people who don't work are lazy and people shouldn't be living off the backs of the government. What the hell else am I going to do if I'm not getting money? Also, you will have a link soon under an extra credit tab to upload your Yellow Rose of Texas. If you choose to do that extra credit, it'll be due by next Tuesday. It's on Blackboard under Module 3. There we go. And John, we've always given money to other countries. The problem is that that we give money to other countries to encourage democracy. And that's how it has always been, at least since George H.W. Bush. We've given money to encourage democracy over what we call communism, or instead of people joining the Soviet Union or going down the path of joining Russia, or even going down the path of siding with China, we want them to side with us. So we give them a little money to help them out so they will continue to have, continue to push for democratic values, because people are going to go with whoever is going to feed them and stuff like that. That's why that's why Al Qaeda is prominent throughout Africa, because no one's helping the Africans, and Al Qaeda is there helping them. So there's a lot of support for Al Qaeda there, because they're handing them money.
I get that, but how are we helping other people when we don't even have any money for our own country, our own people in our own backyard?
Well, we look at it in terms of this here. How much worse would it be how much more money is it going to cost us if we don't invest this money? It's kind of the whole, the whole idea of if I go in and I give money to Ukraine to stop Russia, it's going to save us money in the long run. If Russia starts grabbing these countries and turn back into the Soviet Union, then we're going to have to spend more money in a huge battle. So that's the argument that we have made since George H.W. Bush. It's been the argument being made. How can we save, we're going to owe people money anyway. It's probably best to have all these people on our good side, and siding with us, because if not, then they're going to go another route. And that's essentially what it is. They feel like it's a small drop in the bucket compared to the amount of money that we're going to have to pay to go in there militarily.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know it's all about politics, so yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's about. It's all about that. And I tell you, I know a lot of people are not fans of globalization. It does prevent your country from growing when you own part of other countries' debt, and that country's not doing so well. We found out that we own part of the Greek debt in 2009. That's why it took our country so long. Even though our country was doing well, it took us a long time to move back up and get our credit rating up because we had to have bad credit there, which was Greece, and also Greece and the nation that I believe starts with a P. I can't remember the name of it. I forgot the other one, but I believe it starts with a P. I don't know what it is, but or maybe it's not. Apparently, it's one of the earlier Latin languages. I don't know what it's called. I can't even think of it right now. It'll come to me. No, it's not.
Like that.
No, it's a
Yeah.
country. But anyway, we own like a few of those debts, and Portugal. Thank you, Brianna. Portugal. Yes, Portugal wasn't doing well either in 2008. Like they were doing horrible. It was horrible. And a lot of them, like Portugal and Greece, made a lot of money from tourists and tourism. But they weren't taxing a lot, and they weren't doing that, so it kind of hurt the system. And since we own part of that, then it really hurt us. Thank you, Brianna. I was like, I knew it started with a P. Portuguese is that language. Is that old language? That old language. But that a bunch of languages have stemmed from. So yeah.
So where's our gross national profit at now? Our GNP.
I have no idea. I have no
Yeah,
idea.
okay.
I can tell you that we're at around 33 trillion in debt. But
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if that debt matters. I think it does, but I don't think it matters as long as our country is as long as we are who we are. You know what I mean? Like we owe a huge debt, but we're always going to be buying, and we're also always going to be doing things like this. The issue arises when, and the countries that we owe the most money to is China. Like, what are they going to do? Attack us? And then we're not going to pay them. I mean, because we don't want to pay them anyway. So it becomes one of these things where I don't think I think that in this case, globalization and intertwining of nations, it has helped out a lot. If we were not intertwined, if this were 1983, this would be bad for us. Well, not really, because we still had nuclear weapons, but still, you know. As long as we are the baddest people on the block, then we're fine. But China has created some supersonic missiles that are faster than ours. So China is ahead of us. I just don't know, but the Chinese know that we are willing to, like, we're not going out without a fight. Like we're going, like we'd rather die with them than to let them beat us. And that's just, I don't know if that's good or bad. All right. Did we talk about did I show you all the ballots for Hayes and Travis County?
You showed us Hayes, but not Travis.
Okay. So let's get to showing you that one, Travis County, because that was the other one I wanted you all to see, since many of you are in Travis County, unlike me, who is in Hayes County. You know, but all right. So here we go. So when you go here to the website, the Travis County Clerk's Office website, then you'll be able to see all of the information on voting and things like that. It'll tell you where you can go to vote early if you want to vote early, which I always encourage people to vote early. But if you're one of those people who say, I want to vote on election day one time, well, this is the election. This is the election to go vote on election day, because a lot of people won't be voting in this election. So if you want to get that feel of voting on election day. Now, election day, as you can see, we have polls all around, depending on the county that you're in. So each one of these areas right here are precincts, right? It tells you, as you can see there, I don't know if you can see, it says precinct 463 because I clicked on that, right? Or this one, precinct 350, and it tells you where it is. It's in Monterey Oaks, and this room here. Now, what I want you to understand is that in some counties, and see if you click this, it'll even give you directions there. But in some counties, if you vote early, then you can vote anywhere, right? I'm sorry. So if you vote early, okay, I'm trying to scroll down. So if you vote early, then you can vote at any of these places, right? You can vote at any of these places because they don't care since you are voting early. And then on election day, what they tell you is that you have to vote in your precinct. I don't know if Harris County is like that. I mean, Travis County. I'm sorry, I'm getting all these counties mixed up. I don't know if Travis County is like that. Travis County is probably one of those places where you can still vote anywhere. But if you vote on election day, you might have to vote on your precinct, in your precinct. And this is where you have to know what is my precinct and all that there. And when you log in here to look at your ballot, so we have the sample ballot, which is right here, the polling location, and it should have a place where I have no idea where it is on this site, but it should be a place here where it tells you, oh, here it is. Let's see if this is it. No, that's ballot by mail. Anyway, there should be a spot where you can look up your precinct. It's also on your voter registration card that comes in. It'll tell you the precinct that you're in. This is why I tell folks to vote early, because you can just vote wherever you want to vote, no matter where. If it's one at ACC, you can walk right there and just vote there. And you'll be able to find all of these sites and things like that. So, okay. The polls close, as you can see, at 7 p.m. on election day. If you're in line on election day, just stay there. Even if it's after 7, you'll still be able to vote. And as you can see, early voting will end on Halloween, right? And these things will be open. Some of these things are open until 10 p.m. All right. So we go here. Oh, here it is here. So the accessible ballot, you come here, you type in your name, your first name, last name, and birthday. It'll tell you what your ballot is. This is what it is right here. It'll also tell you what precinct that you're in, and it'll just put it on you. It'll give you your stuff. It'll bring up your information and tell you, your stuff here. But what I'm gonna look up, since I don't live in that county, I'm gonna look up just the Travis County ballot, which is gonna give us everything, right? Gives us all of those constitutional amendments as we talked about. Taxes on feed, whether or not children have, parents have the power over their children and things like this, whether or not bail is going to be denied or allowed to certain people, because people get out on bail and they get out and kills other people and stuff like that, even though they're supposed to be in there. But, the Constitution is an interesting thing. An amendment that's already on the books that says that you have to be a citizen to vote, which is kind of weird because that's just what it is. There's a lot of weird things on there that are unnecessary because it doesn't make sense, but it's there to get people out to vote. And we start to see the propositions, a tax rate in Austin, in different places. And it just goes through every city in the county that might have, things on the ballot, as you can see, from Elgin to Creedmoor. You'll see stuff. Pflugerville, Sunset Valley. Pflugerville is getting a mayor. It looks like a new mayor. And many of the cities are getting a new mayor and stuff like that. Even the school districts, as you can see, we have Hayes Consolidated. We have Hayes School District. We have Copeland School District. We have Lago Vista School District, West Hills. And this is what I was telling you about, right? These are special districts. These are districts like Hayes is in Hayes, that's Hayes, but they still cross into Travis County. And this is what I was telling you, that when you see these special districts, these things are government entities inside other government entities. So they're operating inside of government, right? Hayes Consolidated is operating inside of Travis County. which is also operating inside of Austin, right? So it's operating inside of a school, And when you look here, we got all of these mud districts that we talked about in our lecture on local government, right? Road bonds, things like that. We got bonds for wastewater to create a water system there so you don't have to have a water well. You got all kinds of things that even have to do with the trash service so you no longer have to go out there and dig a hole and burn your trash or pay for trash, your own personal trash person to come around and stuff. So all this is on the ballot. This is what you'll see. And it's a bunch of stuff there. Don't let this overwhelm you because you will not have to vote on everything. You'll just have to vote on the thing that relates to your district. As you can see here, if you don't live in Wilbarger Creek, then you don't have to worry about that there, right? So there we go. I don't know where this place is, Wilbarger Creek, but it looks like it's about to get going. It looks like a great place to go get some land right now. They're creating a wastewater system. They're getting recreational facilities for parks and recreation. They're updating the roads and it's about to be a nice little city. I guess the overflow from other cities in Travis County is moving in there. Again, I have no idea where this is, but it seemed like a nice place. I remember someone talking about Georgetown, years ago, and we see what that has turned into. So anyway, there we go. Everyone excited about voting? I guess no one's excited about voting. Oh, I forgot. I have one other thing to show you because I exited out of that, which is here. In the Texas Tribune, the things that you want to know about Texas midterm, you can let them know, and they will explain it. So next year, as you can see, almost all of the state offices, all the state offices are up. As you can see, almost all of them, and all of the House of Representatives are up at the state and federal level, and we have some senators up. And one of the Texas U.S. senators, which is John Cornyn, is up for office, for re-election. And as you can see, all of this stuff here will be things that we will be deciding during the March primaries to decide who's going to be the top Republican, the top Democrat, who's going to be running as a Green Party, who's going to be running as a Libertarian, and all that stuff there. And if you have any questions about something that you want to know more about, the senators, race, the land commissioner, the ag commissioner, any of these things here, even down to the courts, then you just click it and you ultimately vote on that, and then they will write more articles about that. If you're wondering. Like if you're thinking to yourself, I love to learn more about the government without all the extra nonsense that Professor Hawkins gives us, then there we go. You just click that. This is great learning about it without all the extra. So I apologize. There we go, Ren. Ren seems happy. Yeah, super. That's actually how I read it. I don't know how you said it. All right. Here we go. We're back to this here. We're back to the policy portion. And we left off here talking about, or at least we, you know what, let me back up. Oh no, I guess I'm not backing up. Going forward. So this is an important slide right here, right? We talked about the caucus. We talked about the party convention. We talked about the direct primary, right? All these things are important. All of these are different types that happen. The party convention system, we still do it at the federal level for the president, and it's also used by third parties, as you know, many of you learned last section during our lecture on the parties. Okay. All right. So remember when I told you all, and look, I'm not trying to confuse you all or anything like that, but I told you all we had the characteristics of political parties, and then we had the functions of political parties. And a couple of you got them mixed up. So I'll tell you, please don't get these mixed up. These are the three historical types of primaries, right? Three historical types of primaries. But we also have two other types of primaries, right? So we got the historical types, which are three, but we have these two types of primaries as well, which are closed and open. And how it works is this here, right? Closed primary mean that only people who are members of that party can vote. So you have to have been registered as a member of that particular party to vote. Open primary means that you can show up on election day and decide who you're going to vote for. Okay, let me explain it to you. So, 2016 election, right? We had elections where we had Hillary won some and Bernie won some. And here's the thing. A lot of people were like, I don't understand people supporting Hillary when Bernie has a lot of steam here in this state, and this state, and this state. And this is why I think that people were like, I support Bernie. I mean, I support Hillary because of this reason here. So leading up to the election, and some states have different rules, right? So you might have to have been registered as a Democrat for at least a year and a half prior to the election, or 2 years prior to the election, meaning an election term prior to the election, right? And then you can vote, right? So I'm going to use Missy. There we go, Missy. She doesn't mind. So Missy, so let's just say that Missy voted, Missy registered in 2014 as a Democrat. She's like, I'm going to register as a Democrat in this state. And she's registered as a Democrat in 2014. Cool. All right. Ren registers, Ren does not register as a Democrat, right? Ren is just an independent, or Ren is registered as a Republican, right? Now, the election comes around, and in states that offer open primaries, Ren is like, I don't like the Democrats, right? We have Trump. So I'm going to vote in that primary. I'm going to vote for, Bernie Sanders, because I can't stand Hillary. She's a terrible person, right? Now, most of the people in the Democratic Party are probably thinking, I love Hillary, right? So Missy, if she's in that state, then Missy's going to vote for Hillary, right? Now we get to other states where the primary is closed, where only party members can register, can vote. And the same thing happens, right? Missy is registered as a Democrat, and Ren is not registered as a Democrat at all. The election comes along, and Ren's like, you know what? I would vote for Bernie. And the party says, if you were going to vote for Bernie, you should have registered a year and a half to 2 years ago. So you can vote for Bernie in 2 years. You can vote for Bernie in 2018. You can't vote for Bernie right now, right? The only people that can vote in the Democratic Party can vote for Bernie or against him, or vote for Hillary and against her, would be Missy and people like Missy who registered as Democrats. All right. And it became a weird thing, right? Because first off, Trump's children, because President Trump, he was a Democrat. He was a registered Democrat. His children were registered as Democrats. His children couldn't even vote for him in the primary in New York because they were registered as Democrats, and he was a Republican. He was running as a Republican. So what does that tell you if you're a Democrat and you see Bernie Sanders winning states when the primary is open versus when it's a closed primary? Well, I think it made a lot of Democrats think those are probably Republicans voting for for Bernie Sanders instead of Hillary. You know what I mean? Is that making sense to everybody? The purpose of the open primary, because we saw it in 2008, it allowed for people from the other party to infect your party's a nominee. In 2008, we all knew that that John McCain was going to be the Republican candidate. Hillary and Obama were still battling it out. And a lot of Republicans was like, I voted for Obama. I voted for Obama. Yeah, you voted for Obama because Rush Limbaugh, a talk show host, if you don't know who he was, and many other guys on Fox News were saying, you should go out and vote for Obama because we have a better chance of beating Obama. You can't trust the Clintons. So a lot of Republicans in these states where you can vote in the other party's primary were voting for who they thought would be the weaker candidate. What are your thoughts on that? It's good stuff, right? So hopefully everybody understands that. Who does not understand anything that I just said? Okay, I'm asking. I'm here. All right, go. Hannah said, I already knew all this. I know all this stuff. Just keep moving. Just move on. Right. Um, yeah. So you know, I will tell you that that people's first choice, people's first choice in that election in 2016 was weird. They were like, my first choice is Trump. And who's your second choice? Bernie Sanders. What? And they were like, my first choice is Bernie. And who's your second choice? Donald Trump. It was the weirdest thing. I know Missy said she remembered that other part. I don't know if you remember that part too, Missy. It was weird. So like
I do remember that.
Yeah, whenever Hillary won, they all voted for Trump. You remember that?
Yes.
It was so weird. And they were saying in Ohio and Michigan, they were like, well, Hillary, she didn't come back. No, a lot of those people who voted, they wanted Bernie. And they didn't get Bernie, they went for Trump. Because I think that they all wanted something different. And boy, did they get something different. They got something different. So you know, it is what it is. Okay. So you can just jump down to the bottom, well, to the third bullet where it says the plurality vote. A plurality vote is just, whoever gets the most votes, that's easy. The election is held on the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November in even number years. Um, and midterm elections happen on non-presidential election years. So remember when we created our new Constitution of 1876, right? When that thing went into effect, now our governors would be elected. Now we're going to have a statewide election every 2 years, right? But when they had it every 2 years, what do you think happened in the elections when you get somebody like Obama on the ballot? When you get somebody like Bill Clinton on the ballot? Right? When you get, what I mean? Like, what do you think happens then? Well, I'll tell you, it affects the statewide races. So what they did was, let's do 4-year terms, and let's make sure that these things don't happen during the same time as the presidential election, because more people are voting in the presidential election, and you're more likely to lose your seat to a liberal. Okay. All right. Um, the general election is the one that I just mentioned, right? It's the one that happens in November, the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. And it is the decisive electoral contest, meaning if you win, you get to be in office for whatever amount of times that they say that you get to be in office. Right. So once you win, you get to serve time in office and things like that. And as I mentioned before, a midterm election is essentially just a presidential election. A midterm election is just an election during a non-presidential electoral year. Okay. All right. A special election. A special election. Right? These things are designed to meet emergency needs or special needs. These things are normally nonpartisan. They don't have a primary. You win, you get 50 plus one vote, and you win. Right? So they don't really happen all the time. It happens to fill a vacancy. A lot of time, if Congress can't even convene because, or the city council can't even convene because they have to, because they don't have a quorum. So we want to get that seat filled and things like that. And ultimately, we got an election. I'm sorry, we had an election a few years ago that basically said that if there's an election within a year of the special election, then you don't have to hold a special election and you can wait. Meaning, let's just say that we don't have enough members on the city council and it's March. Now it's going to cost a lot of money to have an election. So we can wait and just not fill that seat and wait for the election for now in November to decide who's going to be mayor or who's going to be on the city council. You see what I'm saying? So the whole idea is how do we, is how to save as much money as possible. Now, granted, Greg Abbott could appoint someone to some of these offices, to which I think a lot of people are like, I would rather just have my own election instead of allowing him to, to appoint people. I'm not saying that it will be a bad appointment. I'm just saying. We also have the poll tax, right? The poll tax was basically a tax of about $150 to $175, about a day or two or three or more of a farm worker's wage. And this thing here became, with the 24th Amendment, became illegal in 1964. And that's what I was telling you about. When you have to have a voter ID, which is fine, but in order to get that ID, and they're like, well, but the voter ID is free. Yeah, but in order to get that ID, I need a birth certificate. If you don't have a birth certificate, you got to pay $20 to $30 for a birth certificate, which makes this a poll tax. You are charging me to vote, and that is not legal, right? It did go into effect in 1964. But Texas, we said we don't care. We're going to do it anyway. And it ultimately remained in effect until the courts forced them to stop in 1966. So welcome to the great state of Texas, people. We will stop whenever we feel like it, not when you tell us to. All right. Here we go. Texas had some very, very restrictive laws and things like that. It's about 10%, even voter turnout is about 10% of below the national rate. And the whole idea of this here, right, was to prevent certain people from even voting and things, and discourage you from voting, right? If you remember, women could not vote until 1920, truly, right? The military couldn't vote in Texas until 1965. So why wouldn't you want the military to vote in Texas? Like, why would they tell someone in the military, no, you can't vote here? So you're stationed here in Texas, and they say, no, you can't vote here. Why? I thought we all loved the military. Why do you think?
Because they don't want people dabbling in elections like you just talked about, where Republicans are voting for the weakest candidates.
Okay, good point. What kind of people, Missy?
People that aren't from Texas.
There we go. Those folks from New York and California are gonna come down here to Texas and try to California, my state. We're not letting them vote. Exactly. This is wild. I was just talking about this yesterday in class, and I was telling students that like the city of San Marcos is essentially it's a student city, right? The students have the effect over the whole city to turn out the taxes and everything because there's so many more students who are actively voting. And, you know, it's like Missy said, you come down there, you're going to bring your views and vote for something and force the people to agree to it and have to abide by it and things like that. So, and Texans were like, we're not having that. No, we don't believe in all those extra rights and things that you guys are bringing down here. Also, long residency, like you have to live here a certain amount of time to even do it, to even be able to vote, which was just outrageous. And if you don't own any property, I remember a Tea Party guy saying this in 2010, you know, college students, they want to go out there and vote, but if you don't really own land, like do you really even have a stake in the outcome of our state? I don't know if they should even be voting. It's just something about that. I'm like, what is this dude talking about? Right. So, he's a weird guy, right? But the thing is, there are, you know, I'm sure he's not the only person that has those particular views. All right, let's check out a video clip on restrictive voting. Or voter restriction or voter laws. There we go.
Early voting has started for the Texas primaries, and already new voting laws are impacting this election. Thousands of mail-in ballots are being rejected over a new Texas ID requirement for those ballots. At least 38% of mail-in ballots have been rejected so far in Texas's largest county. Chuck Rocha joins me now to talk more about this. He's coming to us from Washington, D.C., but he's a native Texan. He's also the host of the podcast Nuestro. Chuck, it's great to see you. What is in this new law that is creating these ballot rejection issues, and do you expect this rejection rate to continue?
So what's new is that there's a bunch more ID requirements that we haven't seen before. Now, let's keep in mind for folks who don't understand how mail-in works in Texas, it's not like that in every other state. Right. In states like Colorado, in states like California, everybody gets mailed a ballot. It's easy to vote by mail. In Texas, it's very hard to vote by mail, and a super small group of people vote by mail. If you're over 65, if you're handicapped, or if you literally can prove that you're not going to be home, then you're allowed to vote by mail. And it is a small group of people. And what concerns me a lot here is that the folks that are being rejected, will they even have time, if they are even home, to vote? Because they haven't been informed of the laws that have changed. They all have driver's license. They all have IDs. They had to have all this information when they signed up to be on a permanent absentee voting list to begin with. So it's just another obstruction or a hoop that they have to jump through. And it's mainly our old and our folks that are in the military who are getting most of the mail-in ballots sent back in.
You said, Chuck, this is a small segment of the voting population, but that means, or it may mean that the impact will be small, or it could be large, just because every vote that is made more difficult to cast has an effect.
Absolutely. And in a place like Houston, the number's really big. The number of folks there, all of us knows that Houston, Harris County's got as many people as Rhode Island, a whole state. So what may be small is still a whole lot of folks. And so if you think about this and you think about the folks that are getting rejected, to your point, Major, 38% in Harris County, a huge county in Texas. Now, if they sent their stuff in a week ago, and then they had to wait to get a letter back from the county clerk saying, you've had this rejection, can you redo it? Is there enough time with less than 2 weeks before the election for you to send that letter back in, get another application and get a ballot and that's where I start getting concerned is we're running out of days. Early vote in person has already started in Texas, and their election for all of you at home is on March the 1st is election day in the Texas primaries.
And Chuck, why was this set of new rules put in place? Was there any issue in 2020 with the, as you said, noticeably small voting segment in Texas that votes this way? As you said, it's not like other states where it's much broader, or in states where laws were changed simply as a result of pandemic safety requirements. Texas didn't do that. Texas basically said it's the same thing it always is. Age limitations are out of the state. Was there anything in 2020 that caused some particular concern that drove the impetus to change these rules?
Not really. There was no voter fraud anywhere. Republicans in the state house said they passed this bill so that there could be vote integrity in Texas. Well, for all of you, I've been working in Texas for 32 years, going back to working for Ann Richards when she was the governor. And there's never been a big spike of any kind of voter fraud anywhere in the state. And we've been running elections in Texas for a long time. I like to joke with people that over the last 10 years in Texas, there's been more people who've seen a chupacabra that's been convicted of any kind of voter fraud. And for all you folks who are not from Texas, that's just a Mexican slang for a Bigfoot. So that means there hadn't been a whole lot of voter fraud in Texas. So what we get at here is this is just an excuse to try to make it harder for folks to vote under the auspice of voter integrity, where there wasn't even any last time, Major, to your point, even during a pandemic when the counties had opened up a lot more liberalism on how to vote. There was 24-hour voting, roll-up voting in Houston where you could vote from your car with an election official by your side, and all of that went off without a hitch.
So stepping back, Chuck, from this very particular and important sort of granular issue of the implementation of the law in the Texas primary, there's new polling from the Wall Street Journal, and it was verified by some Pew data on the 2020 election, that Latinos, Hispanic voters, are shifting a little bit. And the sands that used to be pretty solidly beneath the Democratic Party with Latino Hispanic voters moving a little bit more to the Republican Party. We saw that in 2020 in the Rio Grande Valley, and we saw it in Miami-Dade in Florida. What are you seeing in Texas in particular and more nationally?
What we're seeing is a young Latino population coming of age. Major, you've spent time in Texas. There's a lot of Latinos in Texas. The average age of a Latino, people have to remember, is only 27 across America. So that means we're a younger population that's coming of age. Our parents and our grandparents were dyed-in-the-wool yellow dog Democrats. They voted Democrat, they voted for Kennedy, they voted for the Clintons, but their children, and then the children of those children who are coming of age, because neither party over the last 10 years have done much work talking to infrequent voters, aren't really sure what they are. They know their parents are Democrats, they know Republicans are these folks, but what happened is Republicans started spending some money to start having some conversations, and what they started doing is digging in, biting in, cutting off at the margin some of the Democrat support. And then when you had an anomaly like Donald Trump at the top of the ticket, who everybody knew, you saw a big spike in the Texas Valley and in Miami-Dade of people swinging from Democrat to Republican that are Latinos. And that's what's got Democrats really worried across the state, is that they're losing a big chunk of their support little by little to Republicans, and they're working really hard right now to stop that inroads with Republicans.
Chuck, I remember covering the Obama-Biden presidency and the campaign that elected Barack Obama president of the United States. And at the time, that's 2008, 2012, one of the conversations you could easily have in Democratic circles was demographics are destiny. And I'm wondering if in Texas in particular, maybe more broadly, there's been a lack of investment, or maybe a sense of, if not entitlement, just a sense that Latino Hispanic voters are always going to be with Democrats, and that may no longer be as bankable.
You're exactly right, Major. What I've been telling folks who've been saying that demography, is it a destiny? I keep saying, no, it's just an opportunity. The growth of young black and brown voters in a multicultural dynamic in Texas is huge, but we have to spend the money as a party. And I'm a Democrat. I work for Democrats. We should be talking to these young people the moment they turn 18 about the values that Democrats have that align with these young voters' values. There's not a doubt in my mind that they best align with us. Guess what? I ran Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign. We spent a lot of time talking to young voters who we knew we needed to get out. And guess what? They like raising the minimum wage. They like folks having health care. They like getting their college loans forgiven. So we got to start having these conversations and not take for granted just because a kid of a Latino or a multicultural Democrat is coming of age that they're going to vote like their mom or daddy.
Chuck Rocha, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Watch what magnesium does to your bowels.
If you have to wipe more than
All right. So what did you think about the video? Before you get started, well, actually, what do you think about the video? What do y'all think?
So, what was the percentage of increase with the Latino population during that particular election season?
Well, I don't really. You're talking about.
I'm understanding it went up, right? It rose.
Right, but I don't know if it's an actual increase. Well, I don't know if the increase in population is what. If you're talking about the increase in voter turnout.
Yes.
Okay. It's a good question, and I don't have that answer. Yeah, I do not have that answer. But what I will say is that when I showed you that chart of people with IDs, with Hispanics having a low number, just like Asians, but Asians still vote. And I told you that Hispanics were actually less likely to vote. Well, a lot of that came from just them not wanting to vote and believing in the system. We're starting to see a shift where there are some who do, where we're starting to see more people believe in the system from this background, which has led to an increase in voter turnout in this group. All right. So I just don't know what it is, but there has been an increase there.
What do you feel was the main reason military folks were being rejected so much? Because I didn't understand that part. It says that they've been putting some obstacles for them. Why will they not want the military people to vote?
I think it has less to do with military and more to do with absentee voting. They don't want you to vote. They don't want absentee voters, right? Think about it, right? Less votes, doesn't matter if they're going to vote for you or not. Less votes means the chances are things will remain the same. If more people are coming out, something is probably about to change. Something is going to be different, and, you don't really want that if you don't want a lot of change there. You know what I mean? The city of Houston, Harris County in 2020 had 24-hour voting, drive-up voting. I don't know if you remember this. I remember watching that on the news and stuff. They had 24-hour voting. And then the Congress went after them and made sure that they won't do that again. But you could pull up 24 hours anytime and vote. And someone came out there and handed you an iPad and stood there and watched you as you voted.
I think that's great. I think voting.
People did too. A lot of people came out after midnight to vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. Imagine if we had that, Missy. How many more people who would vote? Imagine that.
I would hope so. I would hope more people would vote. And I am excited to vote in this upcoming election.
Well, I'm glad. You mean in a couple weeks? Or the
Yes.
2024?
Yes, in a
Okay,
couple weeks.
couple weeks. Okay then. Yes, yes. Right, Alex. That's the thing, right? It does like just because a group of people vote a certain way, it doesn't mean that it's less democratic, right? You're right. Um, I I do, but I would respectfully disagree with your argument that restricting voting, um, um, and I don't know if we're saying the same thing. I could be wrong, but I don't believe that restricting voting and putting restrictive laws in there is going to truly reflect a representative democracy, right? I believe if you allow more people to vote, and we're not telling you to allow people who are, who are felons who can't vote. We're not telling you to allow kids who can't vote. We're not telling you to allow people who are not here legally, to vote. What I'm saying is that just encouraging everyone to vote. I believe Texas will still be a Republican state. And I don't believe Texas would be a barely Republican state. They would still be a strong Republican state and conservative state. I just don't think that we have to try to slow people down from voting to get there. I believe that the Republican ideals are strong enough in Texas to win out. That's just how I feel. Now, if it's nationally, I don't know if the Republican ideals, I think is a pluralist type thing where the Democratic ideals will be out there, at one time, the Republican ideals will be out there at other times. But statewide, I believe that the Republicans will win out at the end of the day. Okay, then. Yeah, I didn't know if I was reading you wrong. I guess I read it. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Um, yeah, so just allow people to vote. And I've always said, I've said this for years to students, and it's crazy because it's coming to fruition. And maybe it's because I was a precinct chair for a long time, and I was a precinct chair in the early 2000s, Patrick Rose time, knocking on doors. And I did a lot of it in Hayes County, and stuff. And I knocked on doors of college students at times when I was in college and stuff. So I could tell that I'm like, this immigration thing ain't it, man. These folks don't really, ain't really worrying about none of that because I don't think they're really looking at it, like, what I mean? Like, I don't think people are looking at it, that way. They're looking at other things, and I've made the argument, as as many of you have heard, this is not a monolithic group. More people voting will just mean it's more people voting. It doesn't mean it's going to have a change in the landscape. We're not going to have a realignment. It's just going to be more people voting. So by 2050, population is going to be mostly Hispanic, if it's not already there anyway. But it's definitely going to be in 2050, and it doesn't mean that the state is going to be a Democratic state, as some people have thought it through. No, it will just be more people voting, having different views on different sides. But my question is, what's the fear, right? I look at it like this here. If I believe that my argument is a great argument and most people agree with me, why do I need to put in some sort of weird fail safe to make sure that they agree with me, to make sure I still win out? That's my only thing there, right? If you got a good enough argument, then you're going to win. You will win. It'll be fine. But the thing is, I think that some people listen to themselves and know that that's not a popular argument. So they force it through. And then we go back to Alex's point. It's not really a representative democracy, right? Well, John, we learned, if I learned anything, that no matter if you get the change, if Beto would have won, people would be voting for a Republican now, looking to a Republican eventually, because we'll be saying that guy's terrible, right? Because you're eventually going to get there and be someone who we don't like, who we have an issue with. I think historically, when you look back at the presidents, like they didn't really have a problem with Jimmy Carter, it seems. He's the only one. They just thought he was just incompetent. You know what I mean? But nobody thought they're like, he don't know what he's doing, right? But I don't think anyone hated Jimmy Carter and stuff like that. But they still wanted him gone. Like people wanted him gone. The Iranian hostages and all that stuff, they still wanted him gone, even if they didn't think he was a terrible person. So we see this happens all the time, that we do ultimately get tired of our leaders and things like this. And that's the beauty of the nation. That's the beauty of our state. That's the beauty of everything, that we get tired of people. And now we can go vote you out. So what I was gonna tell you was that I learned this when I was on the campaign in 2022. I was out there. A lot of people, when I was out there knocking on doors, I had spoken with them early on before the primary, before March. And then I came to speak to them again after March, and I'm talking to them in April, and they're telling me they sent back my ballot and told me that it was wrong, that I messed up, that I can't vote. And these were elderly people who told me this. The crazy thing is this. Do you all remember, like, who remembers signing up and registering to vote? I'm sorry, I worded that wrong. Who remembers if they wrote down their social security or driver's license number to identify themselves when they registered to vote? Who remembers that? If you know right now off the top of your head, I use my driver's license number when I register. I use my social security number when I registered. Say yes or type yes.
I used my driver's license.
So you remember. When did you register, Kip?
Last fall.
Okay, so you remember. Okay, cool. Well, it's some of us, older people, we don't remember. We don't remember how we registered, right? I remember my first election was it was the Ralph Nader win and all that stuff like that. Like I don't remember exactly how I registered. And the thing is, how it was set up, that if you mail in your ballot, you have to sign. Like you have to sign how you, like you have to, you have to write down the, how you registered, right? You have to write down that, oh, you have to write in your social security number again, if that's how you register. And if you didn't register with your social, then you got to write in your driver's license number. So think about that. I'm 68. I don't remember. How do I know? You send it in, they're like, nah, that doesn't work. And that's what was happening. So we started telling people, just put your social down and your driver's license number, so they won't say anything. I told one guy, hey, it's probably best for you and your wife to just drive around the corner and just go in there and vote. You can drive around and have them to come outside, and you don't even have to get out. They will bring it out there to you if you can't go out there and stuff. So, I started encouraging people to do that because the system was rigged, and they would wait. And it wasn't like they were waiting until the last minute. It just seemed like they were waiting to the last minute. I had students, because I'm over the internship program, I had students working there saying that we're trying to get in touch with everybody. It's just hard to get in touch with everybody before the election. And we're sending it out, and they're calling in to the desk, the help desk, and all these things here, because people just didn't know. But a lot of that is to confuse people, so people would just give up and not want to vote. the white primary, which I believe we mentioned this right before, where only white voters were eligible. Yeah, I'm sure I mentioned this in one of our first lectures. The whole idea was we know the most important election is the primary election. And the most important election is the conservative election. Which party has the conservatives? And at the time, the Democratic Party housed the conservatives. Texas is a conservative state. So 1926, they go to Supreme Court. Supreme Court says, I don't know why y'all mad. Like, the Republicans are winning everything. You liberals have been in power forever. You don't have to be allowed to vote in the Democratic primary. To which black people are like, yeah, but I want to vote who's going to represent us. The Democrats are winning all the time. The conservatives always win. We should be able to vote in the primary. The Supreme Court said no. About 18 years later, 1944, the Supreme Court said, all right, that's kind of messed up that you don't get a chance to decide who is going to be your representative since this is a one-party state. And with that, they ultimately said that you cannot prevent certain people from voting in the Democratic primary. So that's essentially what it was, the white primary. Texas is a conservative state. I tell you, it's not red or blue. It's not Democrat or Republican, it's just conservative. And if you want to know which group was housing that party, just check to see who's winning. And the Democrats, for most of the history, were conservatives, and they won Texas. Those conservatives have now moved to the Republican Party, and the liberals, the party of Ronald Reagan, those liberals have now moved to the Democratic Party. And as we know, Ann Richards was state treasurer in 1992. Kay Bailey Hutchison was the treasurer in 1993. And she was the first woman elected to U.S. Senate. So all of this stuff is important. All of these offices and these people. Raul Gonzalez, he was elected to the state Supreme Court in 1986. And as we know, Dan Morales was the first Mexican American to win a statewide office, a state executive office. And Morris Overstreet was the first black person to win a statewide office. So since 2004, black and Hispanic people have made up over half of or represent over half of the state's population. Texas is a majority minority state. And so let me ask you a question on your way out. If Texas is majority Hispanic, let's just say that Texas is majority Hispanic, does that mean that Hispanics would be the majority or the minority? Where would you place Hispanics if Texas is a majority Hispanic? Are Hispanics majority or minorities? Are they still minorities or are they the majority?
A minority.
There we go. So Hannah said the majority, maybe. Kip said the minority in the USA. Well, the answer is Kathy's answer. They would be a minority. Why? Because minority is not based on numbers, it's based on power and wealth. There were a point in time where there were clearly more slaves than there were white men. But I don't think that anyone looked at the slaves and thought, look, the majority is over there. So that's not really how that works. So the definition of majority and minority is based on power and wealth. And unless they somehow gain power and wealth from the people who own Walmart and HEB and those folks, whoever else here in Texas, I don't think that's going to happen. So, all right. I thank y'all very much. I'll see you next week. And you'll see that link to upload the Yellow Rose of Texas on Blackboard very soon. Thank you. How about y'all?
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.